Dr. Mordred's in his garden now. He's alone, and it's deeply silent. The great green trees sweep down behind him in an arc. As he strides through them, the light is very important here. Bright red, shading into pink, and the red seems to inundate the orange/yellow. He's there, exulting in his property, at the back of his garden, even as we're speaking. He's digging now. He's exerting himself. He's digging a deep, small hole at the back of his garden, maybe 4x4. It's a slow job, but he's exulting in it. He seems to be transported, as he does it, into another state. He's got a bag with him that he's dragged from the house. It lies to one side. He seems to be ignoring it, but then he turns his full attention upon it. There's something inside it that may have been a bit squirming earlier on. It's difficult to tell given the effulgence of light that's coming very low now, right around him, around the spade, around the hole, concentrating on the ground, burying itself deep in the ground. He takes up the sacking and removes it from what's inside. It's the body of a child, small, beautifully formed, compacted, and he holds it in his hand. Indeed, he even holds it up to the light, with the care and paternal regard of a father, gazing upon that which he's produced. The child, if that's what it is, it's difficult to tell in the light, but the child is covered in red from head to foot, blood or a trick of the light. We know not. Mordred stands over the hole, and then, slowly, but more quickly as he moves down, he pushes the child into the hole that he's dug, and seems vaguely to stamp down with his foot. Then he takes up the spade and begins to cover the hole, slowly at first, rhythmically, but then more spasmodically as he quickens his pace. Finally, within a matter of moments, the hole is covered in, and Mordred stands there, looking down. Some would say he was sad, but in actual fact, he's exultant. He stares around at the son, my son, at the garden, his place, at the hole that he's dug and covered in, his secret. He looks into himself at the knowledge of what he has done, and he smiles. Because this is a man who enjoys moving over thresholds of life and death, partly because he is such thresholds. To him, all things are possible, and nothing can be denied, particularly in this area, which is his secret and private place, unbeknown to all others. He gathers up the sacking and looks directly into the sun, knowing that it is fading, that it is dying, that it is falling out of the sky. He casts one long, last, lingering look at it, before he gathers up spade and bag, and moves slowly, with a sloping and slightly aggressive gait, back towards the house, back towards the world from which he had come, towards which he is returning, out of which he has manufactured this, and over which he intends to conquer. He's a man who has no circle of morality or accepted standards of reference around him, because he is those standards and makes them even in the crossing of them. He's a special man, you see, if he is a man. He's a creature like no other. No one knows when he was born, and the time when he will die is not yet fixed in the stars. The stars are out now. They twinkle above him as he moves back towards the house. From one world into another, from one life into another, pursuant of one death which may or may not have occurred. Mordred is here, alone, in Violet. At this time, he is the master, both of what he has done and what he surveys and what he will do.
He has the power here, merely to let them burn. Can't you hear them? The voices. They're down there, stirring, rustling. For what do the bodies of those who've been dismembered matter for a purpose like this?
Come now, my beauty. You'll soon be home. Down in the dirt. There's nothing better than fuel. Not for thought, but for renewed, if not alternative, forms of life. I'm here. We're gone from here, my beauty. Down in the aftertaste of this sacking, but not of Rome. No. What would your mother say if she knew that you'd ended up this way, feeding the vipers? Rotten, only in the manner of carrion, but noble, feeding a purpose, duly whipped, not letting out the requisite shriek. Nothing camp here, my friend. We're just refusing to give your burial the solemn assurance you deserve. Quiet. Is there anyone here? We're alone, waiting for them to come up from the depths and burst through the surface. All hungers must be sated, not once, but 100 times over. Dead now, all dead, gone down into the earth, feeding there on the grubs and nourishing that which grows fearsomely, letting nothing stand in the way of that which must feed. Just touching, touching. Listen, can't you hear the silence?
At the front of the house, a young and attractive woman is ringing the doorbell feverishly. Her name is Falicia Fairweather. She carries a black medical bag with MD printed on it. Her gloved female finger rings the doorbell again. Evidently, she has been ringing for a while and no one is answering. But she knows someone is there.
Dr. Falicia Fairweather, my dear. What a wonderful surprise. Let me offer you a drink.
I'm not here for that. What have you done with all those people?
People? What people are you talking about? By what traps and snares are you seeking to engulf me? But I won't be brought down by your wiles, my dear. Give me your scarf.
What do you want with my scarf?
I might choose to do anything at all with it, but in this moment I might choose to burn it in a flame of passion.
I will give it to you if you burn it in the flame of truth.
Truth? Truth, eh? The lady says she wants the truth. But what on earth does she mean by it? There are so many different forms of truth, complicated and contradictory truths. It's a universal concept after all. There can be masculine truths as against feminine ones. There can be legal truths as against religious ones. There can be constructive truths that build up and destructive ones that tear down. Which truth is yours, woman?
My truth is that we are equal, and I should be treated as such.
Equal? Equal, she says. I've never heard the like of it in all my days. The purpose of woman is to breed the child which finishes you, which completes you when you're cauterized by a man's seed. Good Lord, a female doctor. All the money wasted on your education. Even in the French Revolution, at the height of that turmoil, the revolutionary committees therein wouldn't give your kind the vote. Most wise.
I am here to judge you, to hold you accountable for your medical errors, mistakes, the mutilated and abandoned wretches at your door, all those misshapen entities, beggar cripples and dwarves that you sent out into the night.
Really? Your case interests me, but I'm not an alienist. Your particular condition must find a birth elsewhere. She suspects me, but has no evidence. Leastways, a busybody like her. Does she not realize the dark river which flows through the upturned fingers of my hands? I am the master here. I need no laudanum-obsessed fancies to dream the dreams which wake me. Just sending them to sleep, all hoping to enliven those forms which exist underground. Am I a goat to be tethered to the stake? Yet she too, admittedly, in her inadequate way, is a doctor, a fellow professional. Perhaps she can be persuaded to a more reasonable position, thereby becoming attuned to the compassion, the glory, to the amoral colourlessness of pure research. My dear girl, I'm afraid to say that we've gotten off altogether on the wrong tack.
If so, it's your doing.
Mine? I accept responsibility for nothing save the cremation of the inferior. Aren't you aware of the violence which is endemic both in life and in the medical profession? If you want a metaphor for life, never mind our profession. Think of an eagle on a tree stump in sunlight, tearing its victim to pieces. Life is a pitiless struggle. In Japan, the Shintoists have a mythological saying. It's that war is life and life is death. Aren't you aware of the suffering that can be inflicted on microorganisms as I move my hand through the air?
But we are doctors. We're here to heal.
Fiddlesticks! We are here on occasion to give pain in order to relieve it. If a man or a woman has a cancer, a lesion inside their body, we enter it with the knife to cut it out, and that entry causes pain. Pain. Sympathetic pain. Pain. And the possibility of redemptive pain. Maybe I've overlooked that in my researches.
But we've sworn. We've taken the Hippocratic Oath.
Indeed we have. I've taken it many, many times in accordance with my myriad of medical qualifications.
Then, it needn't be...
The worship of Apollo.
It's more than that.
Indeed. Do you know what the Hippocratic Oath says? It says worship Apollo and don't have sex with your male and female patients. And you're not allowed to go with slaves either.
That is hardly the point.
I see you've got no liking for classical scholarship.
Oh, that was then. This is now.
Mordred stands up with the manner or demeanor of doing something decisive. He goes out of the back of the room, going reverse ways down the hall and into the rare conservatory, replete with its great collection of suffocating plants, and he continues out into the garden beyond.
Having tidings here, in this immensity, of a king who once ruled, down beneath this trajectory of blood, in the great mead hall of his folk, given over to rapture as the crow flies, in these flattened Cimmerian wastes, when those in a rival kingdom, who laboured as to nothing, given the Spartan enclosure of his shores, now chose to plot against his person, thereby seeking to bring back from past ages a wizard of remote ancestry. And a dog howled outside the door, seeking to break through the boundary, while green tapers flickered in the background, as a body of armoured men were discerned standing around a blue sarcophagus, within which lay a shrivelled mummy, and upon this one of the votaries had placed a gleaming fire or jewel, there to resuscitate the majesty for devilment of rekindled life. Are we not free of this blessing, sacrifice, or offering?
We are here to confront the facts of your delinquency.
Not I. I merely begin in a specific spot and then go on to the end. And what is that end? The end is being a doctor. But speak not to me of medical ethics. Disease is essentially a question of moral fibre. Even Galton at his prime was unaffected by the nature of my researches.
And Lombroso?
Don't mention that fraud to me, even though some of what he said at the time was true enough.
The matoid?
The matoid, she says. Another sphinx-like illusion of the feminine. Why does she go on in this way when it is quite clear that the matoid is just genetic and somatic material? You must, my dear, try and go beyond that, to the spiritual, or at least to the psychic and to the higher intellectual. Power dominates life in the form of fire. There isn't really a God that I believe in. Certainly not a God of love, a Jewish or Christian God, perforce. I believe in the genius that exists in this hand, as a repository, always of power, creative, fructifying, going forward. Even in relation to this crime itself, falls away as just as conceit. Aren't you aware, my dear, that the weak are just fuel for the strong? And in this life, even the strong themselves can serve as the compost for the very strong. Life is utterly pitiless. Aught else is not.
But you are a doctor.
Ah, indeed, a sacred calling. To close the eyes of one's sickly patients before they totally give out the ghost and can stare and can sense in their nostrils the stench of their own putrefaction. How many times have I told you, my dear? You must get rid of these feminine and bourgeois forms. They clutter up your mind. They prevent you from encompassing an idea. The idea that the truth that is coming for all of us amounts to a new barbarism.
Barbarism?
Don't you realize that you can't have civilization without barbarism?
You're a dialectician.
No. A humble technician, my dear, waiting to serve you. A general practitioner. And I'm also waiting to serve my clients, my patients. I want to close down their eyes and make sure that those orbs that revolve within sepulchres of the flesh no longer exist to disturb us. But you see, still we are back to the reality of flesh and matter. But the mass or matter that concerns me is plant or vegetable life, that which inundates the soil and comes up from the ground. It progresses, my dear, whereas we continue to regress and fall back. And even as it occurs to me, within contemporary morality and its eugenics, when we abort cripples and retards and morons and mongols and the others, will even they be enough to serve as fuel for that which is coming up from under the ground? Anything else is fatiguing even to discuss.
Many would find you insane.
Ah, insane, she says. Like William Blake, I'm progressing through to new vistas. I'm cutting my way through a thicket towards new and secret gardens of my own design. And when we get there, at the heart of that garden, there'll be nothing but beauty. Cannot you hear the silence, the availability of one form over another, depending? Or is it most effectively that one abundance will bring forth monsters, all of them capering in the dust of unhallowed moons? All of this sacrifice is so uneasy, if not baffling to the connoisseur, at once unbidden, waiting to be whetted by this blade. Did you know that this was a surgical heirloom? Something which was handed down to me by my father, and by his father before him. What does Conan Doyle Himself a doctor. Say in that Sherlock Holmes story, the one with the snake in it, I forget the name. Doesn't he, in a moment of exhilaration or despair, say the doctors make the worst of villains if they turn out wrong? Villainy. I must consider this. Am I a villain? Have I cut the tape so that the race can proceed? Have I truly progressed over the hill and into the distance? What is morality but the halitosis of heathen gods? At the heart of it lies the key to new dimensions of complexity and vigor. The future is the present, and I have opened my arms wide so that they might straddle the whole world and draw it to me. No, not Atlas's globe, but the indifferent shrug of a new Titan. Surgeons always pride themselves on their knives, on the scalpels with which they hew and cut in order to penetrate to the heart of the mysteries, to get at the core, to be unbidden or even unshackled. Yes, that's it. There is always a touch of cruelty, of sadism, of zero at the bone with a great surgeon. Ask Keats. But he had problems with the morality of death. Bunkum! There are no such problems. There is admittedly the dilemma, the memory or trace, which life depicts in its trajectory through death. For the one is inseparable from the other.
So, have you considered my offer?
Oh, pray tell. What offer is that?
To resign quietly from the local medical board without a vote? To go, discreetly, thereby avoiding what everyone dreads.
Dreads?
Why, but of course. Don't you fear exposure, media outrage, awkward questions, going before an investigation board and being struck off?
Struck off?
Yes, struck off. You wouldn't want that, would you, Dr. Mordred? It would be an appalling scandal.
Scandal? I hear, see and recognise no scandal at all.
Like the 3 blind monkeys.
3. Yes, you've got an idea there. 3. A sacred number, a symbol. 3. Just like Christ, who was 3 in 1 and 1 in 3. A multiplicity.
Are you being facetious? You know, Dr. Mordred, some people do that when they're scared.
I have never been more serious and less scared. Medicine is a matter of energy. These forms came to me over the years, broken down, lacking in energy. They were finished. They were reaching out to the white line of death, and I helped to haul them over it. Doctors can kill as well as heal, you know. I know euthanasia is a very complicated moral dilemma, but the self-surrender of medical suicide is a wonder to behold. Aren't you aware that civilization is just an exercise in cruelty, which has been tempered by disquiet?
Dessart said that. I've read a lot of his work.
I do his work all the time.
Like you did to all those people.
People? People? What's she talking about? They were just bodies. They were bodies, and I made use of them. They were there to be made use of. They had come towards me, and they were placed for me there as fuel, fodder, and compost, only for my use. Do you understand the nature of the researches upon which I am engaged? Woman, I understand not what you're talking about. You use a language I can't understand. It's like Esperanto. Your thinking to me isn't even human. I would go so far as to say it's subhuman. Subhuman.
Abuse will not get you anywhere.
Abuse, she says. Who is mentioning abuse? It's just a butterfly wing coming down upon your cheek or on your arm. I've been doing nothing but engaging in lively chat. Lively chat with a fellow medical professional. Huh? Aren't you aware that this for me has been little more than a joke when you put a scalpel upon the skin and move it along? There's a tingling and a tickling, isn't there? Like a bit of humour. But life's not really about humour, is it? Life's not really about having a joke. It's passionately serious for one reason alone, and that is that life is death. They're intertwined with each other dialectically, the one and the other. You know from biology, DNA, that curves round, has a spiral and a double helix upon itself. That is what life is. Two strands, life and its negation, death, woven together into one formulation, the one and the other. That's why we should have no fear of death at all. Death is life and its converse. Even those who are in the midst of life are in death, and they shouldn't be afraid, even if their lives are without meaning. And really they can only be given one by becoming fuel.
Are we dead? Are you dead?
No, alive. Certain of my destiny, bound to overcome all lively prey.
Without conscience?
There's no such thing. It's a Jewish abstraction.
How come?
The explanation, my dear, is easy. It relates to Jewish and Christian ideas. Remember Golgotha? That mound, that tundra in the middle of nothingness where they crucified him, the Romans or the Jews. It matters not which story you believe. They crucified him with thieves, and he was up there, a God of pity and conscience who shed blood for us poor mortals down here. No, there is no pity, there is no conscience, except the bad breath of the strong that comes out of the nostrils of giants. You see, in this world, there are two types of human, the weak and the strong, the wolves and the sheep, the one preying on the other. But malevolence, my dear girl, malevolence lies with the sheep, not with the wolves. The wolves are the ones that keep the pack safe, that circle in their immensity. It's the sheep who cower together, egalitarians all, in their swinishness, in their desire to bring down glory. Meaning is distinction. It's the gap between individuals and even between groups. It's the wolves that keep up that gap. And if there's a gap between individuals and you treat them morally differently because they are differently, that creates the space for glory, for art, for science, for civilization. Don't you realize that most humans are worthless and meaningless, and they are given meaning by those who give it to them because they contain within themselves, my dear girl, the divine fire, the fire that flows through them. They've ceased to be individuals, these titans. They cease just to be restricted in their small little egos. It's the sheep that have the small little egos, not those that guard them, that use them as their fuel, that project out of them new forms of glory. You might call it vampirism. I would call it the fire of certainty which exists in all forms of life. And out of that vampirism, new forms will occur. Because you see, humanity has had its chance. It's had its day. We've been around for a few hundreds of thousands of years. There were lizards before us, then it was our turn. But the mammals have failed. And now it's time for the plants that I'm breeding to come up from under the ground. now consumed with the pleasure of renewed expectancy as a magician lies, naked on a dais, a great flaming and sulphurous jewel, its gemlight burning brightly in the black dogs, illuminating the great spaces. Between the towers, before the modern world, our one, this own, out beyond the bravest, in interstellar space, refusing to call down the sky, even before the Atlanteans or Lemurians, there were the Acheronians, and century-haunted Python, their capital, girt in purple stone, dedicated to human sacrifice, and skinning alive their captives in the great religious festivals. Pray tell, what are you here for?
You know not.
I've got no idea whatsoever, apart from the obvious notion that you're plotting against me. I sense you're trying to snare and entrap me. I am the rebel. You are the conformist here, and you're trying to force me out of my practice. You're trying to ensnare me. You're trying to grind me down like the others to the level of the common lumpen. But it won't work. I've seen your game.
Utter twaddle. You and you alone are the one responsible for your own misfortunes.
What a monstrous statement. I see you like the Black Widow, coming over me with those tentacles and legs, seeking to devour me. You know, the small little male, the brown one who runs up the twig, and she's after him with those legs, seeking to devour and draw him down to the thorax, the mouth, there to be extinguished.
And what have you been doing?
I have been engaged in research, indefinite research, further and further and further at the edge of this subject.
Which is?
Evolutionary biology. I have been going forward into new vistas, whereas you have been stuck in the past, furthering the goals of medicine purely in this town. Whereas I have been wanting the species alone to go forward. Have you ever read Bergson's Creative Evolution? I know it's a lot to ask from a female doctor, but that's what I have in mind. Going forward, the entire species going upwards and outwards and further on. I've been at my workbench breeding these plants, breeding these new gods.
Vegetables.
The ones that are going to come up out of the ground and replace us all. I've never given up. Never, ever given up at all. I've penetrated further and deeper and darker into the secrets of botany. Liberation alone is in the plants.
Liberation.
as it was meant to be. Nonetheless, the dilemma which has been placed before us must let rip concerning the pressure, the indentation of our innermost hands. Let us look at the facts somewhat, and these issues concern my early career in botany. You heard me mention Newton earlier. Well, I was the Newton of botany and applied biology. My career began early, outshining the dons, showing them up, and immediately deciding to go into forbidden territories, thereby penetrating towards innermost gulfs of the mind. Especially when we remember that my researches were vertiginous. They were attempting to look at things from a new angle, to traverse the same ground with a pair of goggles on, thereby seeing the lay of the land, discerning its presence by view of an unutterably differentiated perspective. Now, it was then that I made the momentous discovery that I had green rather than blue blood. You know when a baby is born, and this was never mind red blood, in accordance with the customary human pattern. What did this mean? I knew not. I only understood that I had to go down further, farther, deeper and faster towards the bonfires of these mysteries. And I was always seeking out new past and forbidden texts, well beyond the liking or provocation of Linnaeus, the most famous botanist. But irrespective of this, I knew that marvelous new vistas were in front of me, and that I was held in thrall to new ecstasies, new voices, new preconfigured outbursts of fury and expectation, let alone knowledge.
But a magician, once revived and sitting up amidst bandages, with or without any sense of pollution, could only function if he could remember the past.
Acheron's past, before the beginning of the end of the world. And this had to do with the Palatinate buildings, drenched in heat, at once basking in the glow of an orange disk, which foreshortened a sun, panting, filling the sky with a semblance of order, disorder.
And again, the magician's eyes began to focus, to lift themselves up from the illimitable depths of sleep, thereby to see.
Moreover, there were strange, laudanum-induced dreams in sleep. Things such as breasted purple, the drift of this mock Assyrian stone. We are in the plateau of the lions, but still, when confronted with a modern map of the world and delicate vellum, the mage could only hiss like an adder or such like loathsome snake, sensing a traducement, a blasphemous sense of order amidst chaos. For many a time he had flexed his muscles down in the gigantic keeps or amphitheatres of their temples. What with men dancing in sheepskin, wearing staves, and adorned with orange face masks which made their faces look like a constellation of rags or worms.
Furthermore, the magician is bound to come to the conclusion there is something wrong in a world where there is no poison. No sense of blow for blow and blood for blood. No human sacrifice.
As myriad numbers of peasants, primitive beings, that is, megalith builders and dolmen hunters, the worshippers of the gods of old Europe, at once pre-Celtic, go down beneath the axe and the knife on smouldering, steaming altars of red ice. Pursuant to the impermanence of mist. What benefit is there to understand the purity of the sun, of this immensity of fire? What benefit is there to understand the purity of the sun, of this immensity of fire?
Who goes there?
Merely your bad conscience.
You're trying to deny me abundance and self-sufficiency. Even a moment of untoward discord.
Your warriorship is a myth.
Nonsense. I am Grendel. I hunt along those Viking shores, loping along to new vistas of slaughter. I don't even need a mother anymore. And I don't even cry out in pain when one arm is off and hanging from the claws from a Viking's roof.
Is there no other way?
None. We reached the end of the line, my dear. Everything must go on to the end of its quest, even a desert of weariness.
But it's not in the book.
And it doesn't have to be written in the book, because human beings and their books are nothing. Human life is just a matter of noughts and crosses, their lines penetrating and traversing circles without end, remit or moment. Human beings are born in boxes, remain in them, and are shoved into them at the end. I should know, because I put many of them down there in those boxes, but in the end they were just Russian dolls, and I built up from the primary structure, and I broke down again to it to provide food for those who are coming. We have not long to go now, you and I, Falicia. And this is merely to bury the hatchet between us, not necessarily in one another's breast. It all began those many years ago, when I woke from a deep and abiding slumber, far underground, and unaffected by the Gothic magnificence of Hawksmoor's vaults. For who should I not find there but my own self? I can tell you, I shook him vigorously by the hand. It was the awakening, as in the legend, from out of deep gulfs of interstellar space, wherein entities without form, through grim and devious thaumaturgy, were hastening to collect together from the dark eons. You see, I had been brought back across extraordinary immensities of cosmic space, time, and stillness in the universe, thereby to feed upon the dignity of plants. What? It was only then that I realized the importance of the mission that had placed me on this earth. Yes, the plants. The plants are the key to everything in my life. They have been the basis of it, and they have been, ultimately, the sole purpose of everything. Plants, here, blooming around us in immensity and glory, everywhere. In the deserts, in the Arctic, with sand sheer upon the ground, with great floes of blue ice. They're everywhere, circling and going under the ground like veins. Veins of pure beauty and being. Look around you here. We're surrounded by them and inundated by these beautiful green forms of life. To the left and to the right, to the north and to the south, to the east and to the west. But there are also insects. Have you ever read Maurice Maeterlinck's The Life of Bees? It's a glorious book. A book about the nature of the hive, the great architecture of these beings beyond death that represent an exoskeleton of life that contains no life in human form because they are reduced essentially to the matter of function. Insects. They are function. They have no false concept of individuality. They serve the whole, which is them, spiritually. Each insect is a part of a greater whole. They have one soul, headed in this case by the queen, superintended upon by slaves who nurture her in the nectar of their own milk. The egalitarian mass of people. The more I looked at these insects, the more I saw them. The more I looked at them through a magnifying glass, I wanted ultimately to destroy them. I had a decision to make. And even as I looked at them through that magnifying glass, I had the belief that I could refract the sun down through the glass onto them so as to destroy what was there. And it was when I looked at evolution that I came to the decision upon which my entire life has been based hitherto. That's too destructive. Keep the insects to harbour the plants. Evolution begins in the seeds. It begins with the severing of cells, each one from another. The amoebae split, they bifurcated, one as against another, forming new cellular forms of life. Then they became fishes. They flowed in the oceans. Soon amphibians flopped upon the land and moved about. Reptiles emerged out of these creatures, then larger ones again. They came forwards, great claws and teeth, hungering for new prey, all over the planet, surrounded by islets and volcanoes. These creatures finally gave way, a meteor hit the Earth, and all that was left was mammals. They began small and furry, scurrying in the undergrowth, again the plants. Without them, nothing at all. These creatures moved upwards and onwards until simians and semi-humanoids began to take shape. Finally, we emerged, and after several thousand years of development, what have we done with what we've got? A bit of culture, a few gods, a few cathedrals, a bit of knowledge. Work followed by television. That's what 21st century life is for most people. All we have around us are insects. 40% of people in a Western society don't own a book. I sense a distaste for them all. 10% of them can't read their own name. Everywhere, Philistinism, ignorance, absence of science. No one thinking of progress. No one thinking about how we could go on, biologically, from where we are now to where we have to get in order to become divine. I began to see a rancidness there. A pure function without any prospect of evolutionary growth because it was circular, whereas the plants go onwards because they evolve up towards the sun. The two choices were clear, insect or plant. But humans must go! They must go from this planet because we failed as a species and the trajectory is beyond us. We've had our time. Look at these beautiful trees that are coming out of the ground and that are my creation here in this garden and that are going to replace you and you and you and your grandparents and the ones that are coming after you. Because here is the future, in this garden. It's mine, and I've created it for you, out of you, because I loathe you, because I love them, and because I am them.
I laboured for many years, the sweat of ages running down my face, as I had occasion to go way beyond the niceties of genetically modified crops, while always attempting to breed and synthesize raw sentience in vegetable structures. It was then that I dawned upon the truth with a stray Venus flytrap, a plant I had obtained by virtue of an exchange with Kew Gardens, and it was only then that the full beauty of this terror struck me. For the plants were living things, and they were given to effectively drain off systems of silage, themselves nearly always unbidden, and therefore bursting with the ferocity of new life, of new, resumed pleasures. What pleasures were these? I will tell you, particularly as the experiments, like with Dr. Frankenstein, took me deeper and deeper into an understanding of nutritional structures in vegetable matter. Forget Mendel and his peas. The man was obviously an imbecile. While I, even for a time, without recognizing it properly, held the key to the future of botany.
There is another way. There is something else apart from all this madness. I've found it. I've seen it. I can show it to you. We can go there together.
I am the master of what's seen, not you. Do you understand?
I don't want this. And I know that in your heart you don't want it either.
Draw the cards.
Go.
The Emperor, a vessel of power, wrath, and knowledge. Death, death. Yes, the carousal of a new beginning. The sun, a fountain of all knowledge and ecstasy. The tower, apocalypse, judgment, and end of the world. The archpriest or hierophant, a vessel or communicant of knowledge from above. The devil, male sexuality and unbridled eros, the lust to create new forms. And here we have the hanged man, the sacrifice on the tree of knowledge. Knowledge, sacrifice. This is your future.
There is no future for us in this. Oh my God, he's insane!
Dr. Falicia Fairweather bought the house from the remainder of Mordred's estate. She had the garden out back concreted over, but given the terrible events of that evening, she never returns. But there are some very impressionable people in the district round about who think that particularly on a night with a full moon, they can hear rustlings under the ground. It's almost as if something's burning to come up from underground. Remember, the entire surface is concreted over, but these local fools and yokels still seem to think that something is breeding down there. Cracks have begun to occur in the concrete. At least some impressionable people say that they see them. And again the rumour has gone around the district that something is budding. It is about to spawn. It is about to come up from the depths into the light of the moon again. So maybe this is not the end.
What benefit is there